So, where are we exactly in the global transformation to electric vehicles? Has it been postponed? Has it been cancelled even? So, we'll begin today with a report focusing on the global transition to electric vehicles. And over the next 4 weeks, we will report on exactly what's happening in the United States, Europe, and China. Now, what are we hearing in the news media? We're hearing a decline in sales, fears over the range of electric vehicles, reports of electric cars catching fire. So, if you believe the headlines in many media outlets, electric mobility is currently having a hard time globally. In Germany, which is Europe's largest car market, in the USA, and in China. However, what is the truth behind the narrative in this, in this situation in other markets such as China or the United States? So we've compiled answers to these questions in a detailed background report. Now let us begin in North America. Our feeling is, well, looking at the evidence in the United States, subsidies should make the difference. The Inflation Reduction Act, ratified by US President Joe Biden, excuse me, in the summer of 2022, is part of the USA's efforts to broaden the supply chains for critical raw materials, and in particular to relocate downstream processing steps to the US. So, in addition to the expansion of battery production, electric car production will also be expanded. So, the legislation's stated aim is for half of all new cars in the US to be electric by 2030. Big plan, right? So, federal authorities are actually setting a very good example. So, all government vehicles weighing up to 3.8 tons must be fully electric by 2027, with heavier models to follow by 2035. 12 states, including the most populous and economically more robust, or most robust, California, will exceed these targets. So after 2035, the combustion vehicles will no longer be allowed to be sold in the state of California, and violations will be penalized. The IRA, the Inflation Reduction Act, provides the main incentive for electric vehicle purchases with tax credits of up to $7,500. However, the subsidy is linked to certain conditions. For example, the vehicle's final assembly must take place in North America. In addition, both the critical raw materials used in the battery, such as lithium, and battery components such as cathode and anode, must come from the US or a country that has signed a free trade agreement with the US, such as Canada or Mexico. Otherwise, funding for the non-compliant vehicle will be reduced. So far, just under $1 billion has been called up. Now, despite the extensive subsidies, the expansion of e-mobility in the US could be better, as in Germany, electric vehicles sales growth slowed in Germany in the first 3 months of 2024. However, this was the first decline since the summer of 2020. Nevertheless, almost 2.6% more vehicles were sold year over year than in the first quarter of 2023, meaning electric vehicles accounted for 7.3% of all new registrations in the first quarter of 2024. The US is therefore far from experiencing a sales crisis. So, in addition to the record number of e-cars sold, 9 car manufacturers in the US, BMW, Cadillac, Ford, Hyundai, Kia, Lexus, Mercedes, Rivian, and VinFast, reported record sales of zero emissions cars. So the analysis firm Cox Automotive, even says 2024 will be the most successful year ever for electric vehicles and expects them to account for almost a tenth of all US car sales by the end of this year. Now, however, Tesla suffered a significant decline in its home country, having sold around 13% fewer cars in the first quarter of this year than in the same period in 2023. In an interview with Reuters, Elizabeth Creer, who's the vice president of the electric vehicle practice at JD Power, said that the general EV sales setback in the first quarter of 2024 is due to the sluggish expansion of US charging infrastructure. So, in addition, the price of new EVs is also higher compared to internal combustion engine vehicles, and consumers think the EV's range per charging cycle is too low. So, in its calculations, the analysis firm, the Conference Board, does not see electric and combustion vehicles reaching parity until 2038. This is 8 years later than the target year set by Biden. So, too little investment in charging facilities, too few incentives to buy, and shortfalls in demand stand in the way of achieving the target. Now, McKinsey notes that the charging infrastructure in the US would have to increase more than eightfold for enough households to have sufficient access and for e-mobility to become more attractive. To close the gap, the US recently announced a massive investment of 1.3 billion US dollars to expand and modernize EV charging facilities, especially along highways and other main traffic arteries. Now, according to AlixPartners, consumers want charging infrastructure to improve before they buy an electric car. Makes sense. In a survey, the analysts found that perceived limited range and lack of charging options deter Americans from buying electric vehicles. So to achieve the government's targets, sales would have to increase significantly. That's it for this week. Next week, we'll report on China's expansion, also China's progress in electric mobility. Thank you.